Florida prosecutors announced a manslaughter charge against Michael Drejka on Monday. He killed another man in a parking lot last month and at first walked free. The sheriff in charge of the case cited Florida's stand your ground law, but the state attorney overruled him. Manuel Bojorquez has more.
Today's arrest of Michael Drejka was what 28-year-old Marquise McLaughlin's family had been demanding for weeks.
I was happy.
Michael McLaughlin is his father.
It was something that should have been done 3 weeks ago, but I'm just finally glad that it happened.
The shooting happened last month. Surveillance video shows McLaughlin pushing Drejka to the ground after Drejka confronted McLaughlin's girlfriend, Brittany Jacobs, over a handicapped parking space. That's when Drejka pulled out a gun. According to the charging document, McLaughlin immediately backed up when he saw the weapon and turned towards the store. As he turns away from Michael Drejka fires one shot. McLaughlin was hit in the chest and ran into the store, collapsing in front of his 5-year-old son. He did not have a weapon. The Pinellas County Sheriff had initially said the shooting was justified as self-defense due to Florida's stand your ground law. Family attorney Michelle Rayner calls Drejka a cold-blooded murderer.
How do you account for the difference between the sheriff's initial response to this and what the state attorney is now saying?
Well, I can't speculate on what the sheriff's state of mind was. The state attorneys who do this day in and day out, who try these kind of cases and who apply the law to the facts, decided that stand your ground was not applicable.
There is a memorial for McLaughlin at the parking spot. Our attempts to reach Michael Drejka after the shooting have gone unanswered. He could be arraigned Tuesday on a manslaughter charge that carries a maximum sentence of 30 years in prison. Elaine?
Manuel Bojorquez, thank you. Joining me now from Seattle is Emily Compagno. She is a former federal and criminal defense attorney. Emily, thanks for joining us. Let's start with the basics. What exactly are stand your ground laws and how do they work?
Right. Florida has an actual statute called a stand your ground law, which accounts for the fact that if you are in a public or even a residential place where you have a right to be, the Florida statute states that you have no duty to retreat and, in fact, have a right to bring or threaten force, certain kinds of force, depending on the situation, if you are being threatened with or defending against force. And it also includes a provision for deadly force.
Well, the state attorney charged Drejka with manslaughter, meaning it was ruled the stand your ground law did not apply in this case. In your opinion, was he charged correctly?
At this point, I believe he was, and here's why. From that video, there's enough room for interpretation where either a trier of fact, which would be a judge in this case, he or she should make the determination whether the stand your ground statute applies and can rule on a motion to dismiss, or a jury of his peers need to determine whether he, in fact, used deadly force in a self-defense capacity in a reasonable manner and thus would either get off, or if he used it excessively, would serve jail time. But ultimately, there's room for interpretation, and that's why there should be charges.
Well, Drejka was not arrested after the incident. The officer continuously defended his decision not to do so. How did the arrest component play a part in Monday's charges?
To me, it kind of highlights the difference between the law enforcement bodies and the prosecutorial bodies, and especially in the state of Florida, where there is the stand your ground statute. To me, it kind of illustrates that the sheriff was essentially trying to follow the law. Look, he says he has a reasonable fear of force. Who am I to decide otherwise? But usually we have a difference, right? Usually the threshold for arrest is obviously lower than prosecuting bodies, so we usually see it play out in the opposite. But again, because there is room for determination, that is why charges are warranted here, so a judge or jury can make that determination, not the sheriff.
Well, will this set a precedent for future stand your ground cases?
I will say that depending on how the court case works out, that's where precedents would be set. I think this definitely shows the sheriffs that they should think twice about following the law, because remember, they can or following that particular statute, they can always arrest and have declination of prosecutorial charges from the prosecution side. So I believe moving forward, it would probably behoove there to be an initial arrest and then charges to not be brought versus having the opposite here.
Well, Drejka's first court appearance is set for Tuesday afternoon. What can we expect?
I anticipate that he will plead not guilty to the manslaughter charges, and then as this case proceeds, essentially look for him to bring a motion to dismiss motion, which basically says, look, Judge, I shouldn't even be charged, stand your ground applies, and if that proceeds, then at trial he would plead self-defense, and then the jury determines whether it was excessive or whether it was reasonable. If it was reasonable, he gets free. If it was excessive, then he would serve time.
All right, a case that's getting a lot of attention. Emily Compagno, thanks very much, Emily.
Thank you.